Welcome back. Welcome back. I don't know the number. I don't know what number we're on, right? But I think it might be episode 11 or 10 or 11 now.
Do you know what? We're not Joe Rogan. We don't need to say it every episode.
But
Oh, is that your thing? Is that your thing? Sorry.
All right.
I think it's 10, isn't it?
Thank you,
10.
Chiro. Thank you. I could actually go on YouTube now. Episode 10 or 11, but I'm not Joe Rogan as I've been told, right? The topic of discussion today is becoming the father I needed, right? They're no longer guests. They're now hosts. We don't need to do an introduction again.
No, we're good.
So we're going to get straight into it, right? How does that topic sound? What does that ring to you lot? What does that bring up to you lot? Becoming the father I needed.
Well, for me, that is really reflecting on how Brendan brought our father, Brendan, dad.
Why don't you call him dad?
Do you know what?
Yeah, why don't you call him dad?
Okay, it's not just me.
But he's asking us.
Just so you know.
Not asking Joe Rogan, bro.
I believe, I can only point to this, is our older sister, who's 7 years older than us, called him Brendan, and she was a stepsister, and I think it just set. Now, I kind of look at it as shouldn't have been allowed to do it, but we were allowed to. So, and it just kind of become routine. It's now awkward to say father or dad. But for me, the question is simple. Like, it's reflecting on how you were brought up and how you've taken that into your parenting style.
Ooh, okay.
Okay.
Similar to Chiro or?
He kind of, yeah, it was a good one. It was a good what he said there. I think, actually, run back the question.
Run it back. Becoming the father I needed. It wasn't really a question. What does that bring up to you?
I think the word that hits me is communication. I think that is a big one. Like how to communicate. And I don't want to even seem like I'm bashing my dad, because that is not what I'm trying to do. But I felt like that when I become a father, I really wanted to home in like how I communicate with my children, how I behave in terms of like lovingness, if that's even a word. And yeah, just how I behave, like action. I think that was big. Communication, like that's what's hit me, like how I communicate as a father. And that is like action wise too. I think that's massive.
I don't want anyone to feel that we're bashing fathers.
No.
I don't want it to be just because you're reflecting and you're saying things that could be better doesn't mean that the actions they did wasn't the best they could do.
No.
It just means that we're learning from that as a previous experience, because I think some people take it as a negative because it's you're criticizing their actions. No, I'm not saying it in a negative way. I'm just saying I've learned from that experience and now I'm moving on and hopefully going to have a better experience.
Yeah, and I think there's nothing wrong with criticizing.
No,
there is nothing wrong,
you
but
know,
some people are gone, sorry.
So, just before we get into it, because I think a big thing is us reflecting on how we was fathered.
Yeah.
Right? But I put up a post one time. Obviously, part of my like content calendar, I speak about my past. I put up a post about Brendan, our father, our dad, right? And he, it was like something to do with alcohol. Like I feel like at that particular point, I felt like he picked alcohol over us or something, yeah. And this guy, from around the way, he saw me one time. He saw me one time at the gym. I think I told you this, innit? Barry, and he goes to me, your dad was a good dad. Like, your dad was a good dad. And I was like, yeah, I know. He was like, putting all that shit up. I'm like, what? Like, I was like, wow. Pardon me. I've gone, like, bro, I know he's a good dad, but this is a reality.
Yeah.
Like, like, this is a reality. So I think, like, definitely not bashing, but I think it's a healthy space to criticize. Like, what? Surely that's why we try to improve.
Yeah, that's the only way to improve. Yeah. I remember, I know we'll go into it more. Remember that article Sean done in The Sun years ago?
That was Jerd, innit?
And Jerd called me like, why? Like, and I'm like, what do you mean? Like, because somebody's past, they're talking about it, they're not criticizing. This is what really happened, or in their perspective, it happened. What's the problem with that? Because he's bad mouthing your father. They said, well, he's not. He's saying this is what happened in his lifestyle. To say any different would be a lie.
Yeah. And that pisses me off a little bit, right? And we could really go off on this now, but you know what that pisses me off is because whether or not even if me and you experience that's what Sean experienced. If there's a part of my upbringing that I felt that you didn't experience yet, I'm allowed to say it, and you're allowed to say, oh, I didn't feel it too, but I think that's part of it, right? The journey.
My pet hate of a word, your truth. And then
You know what? You hate a lot of words and stuff.
bro,
Chiro, have you got this?
Bare pet hates.
I hate the
I
fact
think
that
that's
you
why I'm
hate
so
so
miserable.
much.
That's why I'm so miserable. I go somewhere, it's like, this ain't nice. He told me it was
I
nice.
hate the fact you hate so much stuff. 2 minutes ago, you just said he hated something else. What was it?
Narcissist. Is it?
Yeah, I just got bare pet hates. I just don't like hearing them. But
Stop collecting pets.
yeah, this is my miserable old man syndrome.
Yeah.
But
That weight loss. You was happier when you was fat.
100%. I had a lot more to
happy
moan
fat?
about. But yeah, you never give your reflection on what that question meant to you.
It's not really a question, is it? Becoming the father I need.
Yeah.
I definitely, what Thomas said, like, I think it's about your experiences of being fathered, right?
Yeah.
Where you feel that in some areas where it fell short and you said, nah, this ain't happening again.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's like kind of like breaking a generational or whatever they say.
Yeah.
You get what I'm saying? And so, yeah, I definitely would run with what you said, T. Now, okay, so now, like, how was we fathered?
How was we fathered? Never been asked that question before, and probably should have thought about it a lot more before we answered it. But how was we fathered?
How was you fathered?
I meant we as a circle,
Yeah.
when you're talking about yourself. How was I fathered? I think Brendan fathered us from a distance. It was like there was an invulnerability to him. There was no emotional attachment. And this is what I feel like 2 parents are needed, because you do need an emotional attachment and a strong attachment to try and blend you nicely. There was no emotional attachment in our house. So there was no female touch, as you would call it. It was a very stone wall. This is it. Like, not saying I didn't feel loved, but it was never, I love you, son. It was never a hug. It was just get on with your day, do this, try and abide by the rules to the household, and everything will be all right. There was no guidance. There was no, what's your future planning? It was just get on every day, wake up, almost like a hamster ball. We're just continuously living every day and seeing how far we could push. So the household, I thought, was very comfortable, but I didn't feel there was anything to progress. There was nothing in our house to say, you can be better. Even when Sean, made it quite well at football, there was nothing to say, you lot should be football players, or you'd encourage. There was no encouragement. Sorry, that's the word I was looking for. The household wasn't full of encouragement for growth. We didn't have that in the house. It's it didn't exist.
Did Dad ever have that convo with you?
Never.
There was no
Any
growing
conversations?
conversation.
Do you have any
No,
conversation?
there was no growing conversation. Loads of
What? I don't
drunk
think I ever
conversation.
had a one-to-one conversation with Brendan.
No. Up until his dying day, there was never a
I
conversation.
think he told me to do things.
Yeah.
Told you, yeah. I think I can. Yeah, if it was more that, my dad would be
It was a hamster ball.
do that, and
Yeah.
yeah.
And everything will be okay. And maybe that's the difference. Obviously, that would be probably where we're going. We are future thinking now, whereas where we was living in maybe a broke household, I would say, definitely a broke household, it was just about surviving and what was going to happen tomorrow. What was we going to eat tomorrow? But then I never thought about food because there was always food there.
It's a good question. You know, I feel like I haven't really thought about it that tough in terms of like conversations with my dad when I was growing up. Like, you've hit the nail on the head. I don't feel it was a back and forth. It was that you're doing that, and that's kind of, I'd have to say that's very.
Just to interrupt you, remember, this is about being fathered, right? So that's
Fathered.
the question. So
Yes.
if you think of the question, it's like try to put yourself in your dad's shoes and think of what he was doing as a father, you know, and how obviously you received that, but that's what we're trying to work at, because we're going to lead to where that was surplus or didn't meet the requirements.
No, I think.
What was your dad's
I think tough love
qualities? What was your dad's qualities as a father?
I think tough love, in a good sense, definitely. Like, I think he had that quality, and
Like
also
beatings. Sorry, beatings. Is it beatings?
I would say it might be a clip.
We're not going to get him arrested.
No, no. Nah, he wouldn't really hit. I'll be honest, he weren't like
Wouldn't
that.
really or would? don't say it was
let's
safeguarding, bro. I don't know.
He might
Let
have
go.
hit me a couple of times. Hit me, though. He
Might.
I think a couple of times, like if I'm playing out and
Clip
having
round the
come,
ear.
a little clip round the ear.
Yeah.
Bit of a shouter. Yeah, I definitely think he's a shouter. But I'll be honest, I felt safe in my household. Like, I did feel safe, and I felt like he made that safe. Like,
Now, what do you mean by safe, though?
yeah, I felt like if someone come in, he'll deal with it. Yeah, someone,
He's on his thing. He's on his
Like,
thing.
I felt like that. Obviously, growing up, it was if Dad's home, everything's all right. I think he done that quite well, and he was a good. And what I mean by provider. Yes, he provided well for the household, but you knew Dad was there, and he was always there. I don't know how he done it, but it kind of that's how I felt.
Let me change the question for both of you then, right?
What your answer?
Yeah, but do you know the reason why? Because I think what we're doing here, we're relaying our experiences, but where do you think
He fathered
inadequacies or do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah.
Do you know, as a father,
Looking back, kind of
looking back, actually being a child or being in his, like, trying to act like he was for us, and it's weird to say it, almost non-existent, but there.
Absolutely, yeah.
Like you said, there was no conversations. There was never a, what's your aspirations? How are you doing at school? There was never a, do you feel okay? How was this match today? It was almost like you said, the presence was there, but there was no physical presence. It was like a virtual presence, spiritual presence. You know what? I need to be home on time. I need to go to school.
Yeah.
But not because you are physically going to do anything to me, just because I need to be there. So it's almost absent while not being absent, because I remember him being there, but I don't ever remember any encouragement, almost being told off. Like, he told us off once or twice, but there was never a moment in our lives where it's weird, never hit us, but I knew not to be in on time. I knew if I didn't get in on time, he'd probably kick me out. So it was like an option of what to do, but there was no, Thomas, this is why you need to be home on time. Yeah. It was be dictatorship, be home, don't come home.
Can I cut? I think what my dad done well, sport man, like football, he definitely was he encouraged me. He would always come and watch. He was always there. Sunday, he would always come. He'd always be there.
Brendan could just kick a ball really high. I don't even remember. He just that
that.
was our introduction to football. He just kicked the ball high in the sky. Yeah. But you was amazed to that till about 11 years old. He's like, I can kick higher than you now, sort of thing.
Yeah, I never forget that.
Yeah. And I think there was a boundary. I didn't bring trouble to the house, but I don't know, was it a scare tactic? I'm not sure, but there was a boundary that we just knew, nah, I'm not doing that because it's just going to be a problem at home.
I don't know, D, I don't know your experience, obviously. I feel like we could have been crackheads if we wanted to be. Like, and that's thinking about now. Yeah. There was no boundary.
No boundary.
And I think we could push the boundary as far as we wanted. He would tell us, and then he'd give up. Yeah, because I don't think there was a boundary. Like, we could have been super drug dealers. We could have been crackheads. We could have just, and the household would have just been the same. Yeah. I feel like there was nothing stopping us doing whatever we wanted to do. It is now looking back at it, and like I said, I haven't looked back at it properly, but just now it's like, do you know what? If I didn't want to do that, like, he probably wouldn't have stopped me. He would have told me 2 times and it would have been fine.
Do you think that's a positive too, though? Do you feel like there is creativity with? I know, obviously, that's probably
there was no creativity encouraged either.
I'm not gonna lie, I loved that. I loved it.
Did, yeah?
I thrived off it. I feel like, and initially, to be honest, in hindsight, I just felt that I was like, I felt like I was just like allowed to do things, But I feel like you was allowed to do things and you didn't necessarily do the things I did.
That's what I'm saying. Our personalities dictated where we went.
Exactly. But just in regards to the original question in terms of how I was fathered, right? Definitely, like, just leading as a father now. Like, I would never dream of being like communicating the way my father did. Like, I never, like, I feel like you used the word back then, survival. I feel like everything was like survival orientated. Like, even the communication, like, communicate when necessary.
Yeah.
Like, is there a fact that needs to be passed on? Like, I don't remember. I could like, obviously not going to the extremes of good morning and good night, but I can't remember like passing my dad in the kitchen and him being like, "Oh, how was school today?" Like, you know, like we like the only incidents was like extreme trouble. Like, that's the only time I'd be questioned.
Yeah.
So I feel like communication, the way my dad communicated with me, I look back and at the time, I'm talking as a man now, at the time I didn't know no better, but looking back, I'm like, wow, that is crazy. The fact that at the time I was doing fuckeries, and my dad never even tried to like pick it apart. Like girlfriends, like stuff like that. You know,
said something important there, and none of us have mentioned it, but I think there was no leadership.
Yeah, absolutely.
There was no leadership in the house to kind of orientate us in a correct way. No morals kind of laid. Yeah. Like, Brendan was drinking. Like, you're drinking heavily. So really and truthfully, we could have sat down and drank with him if that was where we was inclined.
But Tom, we was like in an echo chamber though, because like that whole alcoholism thing, because we wasn't interacting with other families, we didn't know no better.
Yeah, you
either.
thought that happened, right?
Yeah, so like I had no benchmark or nothing like. So the brief instances you would go to other houses, the first thing I'd recognize is they had more money than us,
Okay.
Yeah.
and nothing else. I would
And 9
really,
times out of 10, they didn't have a father.
yeah, and then you'd go and play in your friend's room or you'd run out to the park,
Yeah,
right? So
yeah.
you didn't really know. But yeah, let's do this before we move forward to like how potentially we've molded our like versions of fatherhood around that, right? What about positives though? Because we've like kind of like just that stuck around
Yeah,
negatives.
Yeah,
Any
negatives. I think Brendan was loving in his own way. I think
But that's a bit of a contradiction. So explain that.
I never said he wasn't loving.
Yeah.
I think he was
No,
loving,
but
like I said.
based off the experiences
Yeah.
you've said.
From outside, he created a home where you knew there was a base all
Yeah,
the time.
fact, yeah.
So, like we said, if you were in trouble, if you'd done anything wrong, like I always knew I could go home unless I'd done something against his rule taking. But at the same time, like I said, that on the negative side of that, that also leads me into we didn't have the personalities we had, we were drug dealers, but I was never that way inclined. I was kind of too lazy to do stuff like that.
Too short as well.
Too short, yeah. I would have stood out. Would have stood out, short and fat. He was loving, caring, always had food in the house. We was only poor in consideration to others.
Yeah.
There was always food. We always had clothes. Like I don't remember having rundown trainers or anything like that. We just had the cheapest trainers, but we always had stuff.
Yeah.
So I might have wanted more, but I didn't need more.
Yeah.
The necessities were there.
What about yourself, Chiro?
I'll say, I think like there's an element of discipline. Like my dad looked after himself. Like he didn't really drink. Like I didn't really see that. Or if he did, it would be 1 or 2 and that's it. Providing. He was a provider, man. He used to go out and work hard for us, for my family. And yeah, I did feel that safe. I felt safe. I felt safe in the house. Although yes, him and my mum were, it was rocky, but they stayed together. I had a mum and dad growing up. You know, I didn't have that where it was just one parent. Yeah, I feel like he was very I think on that side he was disciplined, and I'll be honest, like he didn't really hang around with people that were doing drugs and stuff like that. He was quite that. No, I'm not. They're not for me. Like he was very much like that, and I respect that. Although yes, how he projected it, but no, I would say he definitely stood for something. Yeah, 100%.
And again, obviously, you have to appreciate me and Thomas grew up in the same house, so I strongly agree with what Tom said. You know, there's a weird thing that always, I feel like I stole from my dad a little bit, and I kind of admired him for. Like, I always saw him as like this kind of like Celtic warrior. Like, you know, I always saw him as a protector in that way.
Yeah.
As you get what I'm saying, Tom? I always saw him as that because he used to talk about being in the IRA and stuff like that, and I always felt as though. Obviously, I got to the point I realized this guy fucking waffles. Yeah. But I remember, especially like that, like late primary school kind of thing. I felt as though Brendan had like that you said safety. Like, you know, like this was our dad would have our back.
Yeah.
You know? Remember the first time school not so much. I remember the first time I got arrested and we had a stolen moped and me and Abraham got chased through the back park on it, right? And I had no like fear of being hit by Brendan.
Yeah.
And in a weird way, people are gonna watch this and saying your dad should have fucking battered you, yeah. But it actually felt good to know that like
you could confide in somebody.
Yeah, like you know, like I just knew that he had my back, and I remember like seeing his face at the thing, like, and he's like, "What did you do?" Like, you know, like that kind of stuff. And obviously, I don't know if I'd handle it like that, but I just felt as though it was like good to have a dad in your corner like that.
But that's what I was saying, like physical and almost spiritual, like his actions dictated how we felt and how we worked. So like physically, you're not emotionally vulnerable, you're not physically looking after yourself, but emotionally, we know you got your back. Like regardless.
He seemed really loyal to you lot, man. Like he was like, nah, these are my
with us
boys.
for a very long time, innit? So he was emotionally loyal.
Yeah.
And at the time when
Obviously,
he took us on, but it's true.
Yeah.
At the time, you're talking about a single father when that doesn't kind of exist at that time with 3 sons.
Yeah.
And we were reckless. Like there's a lot of instances, we won't talk about it, a lot of reasons, as much as you wasn't probably doing drug dealing Al Capone, we was like bringing girls back to the house, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Did he
Yeah, we
talk
won't go down there. We won't go down
Did he
there.
talk about you lot make sure you're always together, like as a like as
Nah.
nah.
Me
My
and
dad
Thomas-
was big on that though. Like
Is
make
it?
sure you're like we're family, your sisters. I want you close. Like
No.
he always said things like that when
But
we were
I
growing up.
feel as though that naturally occurred for me and Thomas because first and foremost, we did not have an external element to run to.
Yeah,
we
yeah,
literally
yeah.
was the family. So
Yeah.
You
when
just-
Brendan was in it, me and Thomas, Sean
you
was a bit
levitate,
younger.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
But yeah, so look, this is a good point to move to the next kind of question is how did it affect you as a man, these negative and positive things? So that before you become a father, how did it affect you as a man? So you've been fathered in this way.
Yeah.
Can you see any of that overspill into Thomas the man, Chiro the man?
Massive confrontation, man. Like I didn't know there was you either shout or I thought, all right, if I don't want to shout or don't get, I'll run away. I didn't know there was a middle ground. Like you can actually conversate.
So you learned that from your dad?
I would say, yeah, like, he's very shouty.
So it's 1 to 100. There's nothing
But then
in between.
obviously, I know we talk about fatherhood, but my mum was the one that would run away. So I didn't know there was a middle ground of like having a conversation and still being assertive. Like I would just run, or the shout would be like it's a release instead of actually, no, you can confront people, pull them out on their nonsense or
without being aggressive,
yeah, without being
over the
aggressive.
top.
Yeah. I would say that was a negative for me. And yeah, I found that quite hard. I still obviously, yeah, it's still there, but I've obviously understood that you've got to have the conversations, you know. But I would say, yeah, that was, yeah, that side, that weren't taught to me, you know, growing up, I would say. Yeah.
My one, I think one that just is, Thomas mentioned earlier, we grew up in a very masculine environment, right? Like women, right? This is gonna come across extremely homo, yeah, but we did not have a woman in the house, Tom. Like, I did not know about women. Like, I knew what you was meant to do with them. I knew like the whole courtship side to it in terms of rap music, what my friends was telling me and that, but I did not know a woman, how like emotional aspect. I did not know it. I did not know nothing about a woman. Our house was, and the woman never slept in our house until we started dating women.
Yeah.
Oh, so you never,
Never
so
and
like
never.
partner.
So listen, we had our mum, we had our growing up with our mum until I think I was like about 6 or 7, right?
Yeah.
Then from that point forward,
Nothing.
a woman never in our house. So
Why did he choose? He just didn't want to do that for you lot?
We
or-
never had the conversation with him to say
Okay.
that. So like I said, the first woman is Trish. That's all I know that ever slept.
But I'm saying that, but at that point, we
We're
started
grown
dating.
ups,
Yeah, we
yeah.
started dating. But I'm saying to you, as a child, an experience of a woman, you talk about your mum.
Yeah.
Like I had friends talk about their mum, you know, and I think that was one of the things that I think affected me. Like, as like how does that actually navigate? You know, like men and women having friends. Like I didn't know about men and.
Yeah, no, I get it.
I learned from music. Like you learn from music and stuff like that on TV. So I think one of those things, like how I was fathered and how my dad, like that lack of communication, I saw that was the kind of thing that.
Yeah, but bringing that into, there was a question again, sorry.
So
How
how
did it affect you
Yeah,
growing up?
emotional vulnerability, emotional intelligence, non-existent. Yeah, I don't think we had an emotional household. Like, I'm not even going to call it masculine because I don't think it's masculine, but it's kind of stereotypically masculine. But no one spoke about emotions. Brendan was never angry, never sad, never upset. We never knew anything.
Did he ever show it?
No, he didn't. That's what I'm saying. Only until, and he probably drank his sorrows away, and that's why
I see him sad once.
You saw him
A couple
sad
times.
once,
A couple times.
How old was you when you saw that?
I'll tell you what happened. So you can go back to it, Tom. It's a good story. There was some boy that lives across the road from us. He came to our school, and I sweeped him playing football, and he banged his head, yeah. And Brendan came into the school, and he had an older brother, and the teacher said to Brendan, "Oh, look, man, his older brother. Make sure Damien looks after himself in the playground." And I remember we got home, and he started crying. He started saying to me like, "Mate, they're not gonna touch you," stuff like that. But it was like a rage, kind of thing. So sorry, but that was I was in it, but not never ever.
But again, that's emotionally angry.
Yeah.
So anger, that was what you saw there, but there was never any like conversations about, like I said, how you feeling? Are you stressed out about GCSEs? SATs coming up?
Wow.
Your girlfriend? Your this, that, and the other. So growing up, I've said in podcasts before, like there was no point in being vulnerable to people because that's weakness, isn't it?
Of course,
And
yeah.
I don't even know if I looked at it as a weakness, but it was something that I shouldn't do because I'd never been shown it. And I don't know how to deal with it. It's never been explained to me. So growing up and getting into fatherhood and even dealing with relationships, and this is something I'm still learning now, is how to be vulnerable, not just to other people, to yourself. Because it's very hard to accept to yourself sometimes that shit's hard.
Yeah, of
And I
course.
might need help. Like it's the hardest thing in the world to do is say, I need help.
Of course.
And that's for yourself. That's not even expressing to your children that, you know, it's okay to be upset and dad's upset and this is how I deal with it. And how are they gonna then calculate it and reflect on it and then come back to you and say, I'm upset, dad.
I see him upset, but I think it would be more like through his mother passing and stuff like that. I saw that, and I think when my uncle passed, so I see him a little bit upset, but yeah, you wouldn't see it too much.
What about conversations about sex? I said we didn't have a woman in the house. Mate, sex and kids. Like
Money.
money,
Money,
yeah.
yeah.
We was talking about money earlier.
Yeah.
Like money in our house was obviously
I got
Dole
pocket
money.
money. We got pocket money.
£5
£5.
£5 a week, but Brendan got dole money and whatever he could do cash in hand. So our household never had any excess money. Like excess money, what did we get? £50 each at Christmas and a promise of another £50 that we didn't get probably ever.
Yeah.
So he still owes us money. But
I think my mum dealt with the finances. Like he'll work and she would deal, like obviously like I know he would obviously have a bit of money to himself, but she used to deal with
all the finances.
Yeah. That was a big thing.
So how did that affect you lots? How does that affect you now with your children? Because we were talking about reflecting on your father.
So moving forward, I think like when it's a constant thing first and foremost. Like it's not like this, just like it's because even the conversations we're having now, I feel like are bringing back.
100%. Yeah.
But I feel like there was a few things that I said no, like I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that. So I mentioned last time, and just something as simple as my children being like greeting, hugging, you know, like these kind of, you mentioned communication, just I said no, we're definitely doing this knowing you're loved thing, you know. And I love a bit of tough love. I still make you fucking run and I still make you do that. But listen, I will tell my children you're doing this here, and the moment come here, man.
Of course.
That was the first thing I implemented. Like, you know you're loved.
Yeah.
You know you're loved. Yeah, you know you can cry. We can cry together. We can move forward. You know.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was, I would say, probably the first thing I wanted to establish. I did have an idea of myself being this like no nonsense kind of dad. You know, this is way before.
Yeah.
But I dropped that, man. Like, fuck, who do I think I am? You know?
Yeah. I remember, obviously, even didn't want to be. I thought I was going to be a beating father. Kids are something wrong, I'm just going to beat them because they need to be beat. And then like I said, I realized that like leading by physical violence or by dictatorship, it's a route to nowhere because your children are going to learn not to express to you. And like I said, I'm trying to learn to express more. So does that mean toning them down? I shouldn't be the only person that's allowed to express myself, and they should feel comfortable, because if something's upsetting them, they need to feel comfortable to project it, right? Don't keep it inside. Tell me. If you can't tell your teacher, tell your mum. If you can't tell your mum, tell your dad. If you can't tell your dad, tell your brother and sister. They need to feel comfortable that they can let go, because otherwise, how do we stop our children from going down the wrong aisle? Otherwise, they end up doing something, or obviously daughters with the wrong partner. How do we stop them from feeling comfortable about, you know what, dad, my partner's trying to pressurize me into doing this. I want them to feel comfortable knowing that I'm not going to explode on them, or, you know what, don't bring your partner in the house. Even though if she said that, you can bring your partner back into the house and I'm going to say you should end that relationship. But your decision is your decision, not my decision. I'm not going to force you to do anything.
I think, like you said, I don't want to see it on copying. Definitely emotionally available. That was a big thing for my children. Is copying. Definitely wanted them to know that they can come to dad. That is the big thing. You can come to dad and not be scared to come to dad. I think that is a big thing. Yeah.
You know, another one for me, right, is and I this wasn't something that like the one about it being emotionally available was something I had in my head, But as time goes on, I don't feel like I experienced enough environments as a child. And I thought the world was like this really small place, and I felt like everything fluctuated based around this really small place. Like I thought this guy was the most important person in the world. I thought money came from here. I thought when this went wrong, everything went wrong. Right? And I think as you get older, and I think I maybe up until my early 20s, I thought that, until I was fortunate enough to like just travel around the UK more. I feel exposing my children to that now will leave them very much underwhelmed by a lot of bullshit.
Yeah, of course.
I don't know if you ever had it. Like when you was younger, you was excited and overwhelmed and lost.
I remember the flyover in Croydon. We'd never gone over the flyover.
Yeah, you think that's like...
I thought God was over the flyover. Like literally, it's half a mile down the road, and every time I'd see it, like this big hill. Whatever's over that side is God. Like it must be amazing because we can't get to that side of the road. Yeah. And it's like got over there. It's like it's just a road. So what's over the next hill? But like I said, we didn't experience anything apart from CR0. Yeah. Like, and not even the whole of Croydon, because I'd never been to Coulsdon, I'd never been to Fulton Heath. We experienced Wadden Road where we lived, and Wadden Park, and Long Lane and Ashburn Park. That was it.
Absolutely. And you can't downplay the importance of like different cultures, like different like foods, different conversations. Like even as far as my boys at the moment, or my children are heavily into football, right? Like it could be very easy for me to just take them to that same environment consistently. Yeah, you expose them to, you take them to a class, a karate class, a gymnastics class. All of a sudden, they're blinkers. They're at whoa. But again, I think that falls into how I was father, but maybe just that generation of survival. Like.
I feel quite privileged. We went on holiday. We went. And I say Italy growing up. Yeah, I would say, but I did see a different culture. And I like that about my dad. He definitely brought the Italian feel to the household. Like I knew where he grew up. I felt like that was a big thing.
So how did it feel? Because like I said, obviously me and Damien grew up with the household being Brendan, Sean, Damien, myself, and Uncle Jerd ever so often. Yeah. You had a big family. How do you feel like that helped with your development?
In Italy, it was big. Here, it was quite small.
It's quite small.
Yeah, it was quite small. I would say, but we obviously, like I said, I did know about family. Like I think it was a big thing, but then I feel like it can go both ways because family brings drama sometimes. It can go both ways. But in terms of like connection, and that was a big thing in our household, definitely. I obviously he never really come away from that. Like,
I feel like it's affected me like in regards to I'm happy I'm with Selena because we have a small knit family and I'm not very family orientated. Like, I don't do none of that shit. Birthdays kind of don't really care about because Damien's birthday, Sean's birthday, Brendan's birthday. Like Selena's got 10 different people where now you're going to different people. I might not attend to every single one, but our children are going to all these different people that introduce different family members. You got different people living on the street, aunties, uncles, everyone with their own circumstances. And like they were saying, like different realities that you can see. Oh, do you know what? That person lives that way and does that. Yeah. Then you can have different conversations because it's not just my lifestyle that you're trying to replicate. You've got all these people around you. You can see different types of people. You can do different things. You don't have to be around me all the time.
I think, so like occasions, that was quite a big thing in our house. Like Christmas, Easter. Yeah, it was celebrated quite, like food. One thing I loved, we always ate dinner at the table. Always.
I think we did for quite a while.
Always ate.
Yeah, but we had like breakfast at like 6 a.m.
We always had this, we always, after school dinner was there and we ate round the table.
Yeah, always.
Yeah, always did that. No real conversations like that, but.
No, we're just scoffing.
Yeah. Food was more important.
But even that, like that, when I was talking about like knowing you're loved, I feel like even food, that's what I say to Vic all the time. Like, it's very easy, especially like if you like, as you climb the financial ladder, to like ignore these things. So maybe like, like that's something we have to give credits to our like having food at the table.
Yeah.
I know it sounds silly, innit? But especially in the busy world, that could be your 20 minutes of
it's true
family time, right?
Yeah.
And it was always cooked. Like we didn't really have takeaway. I know that's not my dad, but my mum. But it will be, we have the food, cook a home cook.
We never had takeaway, and I think that went into my putting on weight because once the takeaway world become available to me, bro, it would become a problem. Going to restaurants.
What about? Are there any parts of your fathering at the moment that you see your dad in you?
That's a good one. I'll be honest. I think sometimes like I'm very like, no, that's it, and I do see it come out, and I'm like, no, you can't do that. And yeah, I think just open the door. Sometimes I shut it. I'm like, no, and I think that can be not. I suppose it can be negative because I'm not seeing it from a child's perspective sometimes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like very just shut off.
Shut off. Yeah.
Your kids are quite young as well, them
Yeah.
shit, bro.
Yeah. So, sorry, bro.
No, I guess it's like that's definitely not an entirely negative thing.
No. I think the boundary, and I think it's a positive, but also I think sometimes I tell you what plays in my head. So I find it quite hard, as in being stern with your word, and I'm like, oh, is he gonna think he can't talk? So that's an insecurity. Is he gonna think he can't talk to me when I'm older? So that plays in my head sometimes. I'm like, Jiro, chill. That's your own insecurity there coming out. Yeah. So finding that balance. Obviously, my son's not even 4 yet, and my daughter's 2. So they're at that age. You say something, they don't even register. You know, and then you're thinking, oh, do I have to go back on my words, or I have to put the boundary in place? And it's just like, chill.
Yeah. I do think yes and no. Like that's why I mentioned it. I think at that age, Thomas, your children are a bit older. Yes and no require an explanation.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like
Massive.
the kids are starting to form beliefs and values.
Yeah. Why
I think,
you do?
I think at that age it is sometimes like just no, just no, innit? Just no.
Yeah.
They're still babies.
Yeah, you know. T, what about yourself? Do you see any part of Brendan in you?
Like I said,
I do.
Sometimes,
Stubborn.
yeah. So I was going to get there. Sometimes emotional in my vulnerability, it's hard to overcome that all the times, and sometimes I have to take a step back and think, you know what? It doesn't have to be that. You can relax yourself.
Give me an example of that, T.
So emotional run. So I'm pretty much like one level most of the times. But at the same time, I do get sad, but I don't know whether it is a bad thing for me, because I go back to center quite quickly. So when I'm feeling when I'm feeling upset, maybe them seeing me upset a bit more would be helpful to them. Okay, he's not invulnerable, but that will happen in time. And you don't know how they see, because I think kids pick up on things. You know what, he's not in a good mood. Just because I feel like I'm 0 doesn't mean they can see it. So, but I feel like I don't express myself to the full extent as I could all the time. Also, sometimes I get caught up in the strictness of things. I remember walking down Croydon with Rianne one time, and she was wearing skin color leggings, and I was not happy about that, and I had to say sorry in the end. I think it was Selena that told me like that's a bit much. Because like, why are you wearing skin color leggings? That looks the same. That means you're not wearing nothing to me, even though you are wearing something. Any man that looks at you thinks you're just got a t-shirt on. Like, you're not coming out with me like that. You're not doing that. But do you know what? Have I overstepped the boundary? She's wearing clothes. She's just comfortable wearing that. So not being like pushing my agenda onto her, and sometimes looking at, she's a child, she's growing, she's experiencing different things. I don't need to be the ball in a china shop when she does something wrong, or any of the children do wrong. But I have taken that on board, and I am. But then that's not Brendan either. That's just me. Yeah. That wasn't Brendan. That's just me.
That what Brendan
yeah,
was like?
that wasn't Brendan.
Yeah.
That's just me. Yeah, sorry, Dad. That's all me.
But yeah, like I think the bit with what you mentioned, the skin color leggings, it's like also having the patience to deliver what you want to say.
Yeah,
and not because we say being strict,
Yeah.
I think you can deliver what you're saying, but it's like you're trying to, like right now, she needs to know, I fucking hate them leggings. And I want her to know that if she ever wears them again. But really, from our experiences, from being fathered, we know that delivering it like that is probably the worst thing you can do. And like giving her an alternative or waiting like 20 minutes, that whatever way.
But it doesn't have to be about the leggings, the conversation. It could be about self-value. And,
you go to,
And again, looking at it from my perspective, does it have to be my self-value and what I think them leggings are is not the same as hers. So just because I think they're out or like, don't do that, doesn't mean it is that. My point of view is not God's given Bible of what the world sees this as, and having a conversation, like you said, where she can converse back with me, if that's a real word, that is a real word, about the situation might change my point of view. So it doesn't have to be, it is this way or no way. It can be a conversation of, oh, you know what, you were right. I'm wrong. I'm sorry.
Yeah, absolutely. I just see, that's before I mentioned my children have widened my perspective for that
Yeah.
level thing. See, like you're saying, skin color leggings. Yeah, like first and foremost, we all have done that. We didn't wear leggings, hopefully, yeah, but
How about you do?
yeah, I won't wear skin color leggings.
It's
But
all right. It's all right, bro.
we've all had some kind of like fashion or period where we've done something completely adverse our parents' decisions. Yeah, but I think you, as a parent now, I think it might, like, perspective wise, you just have to appreciate that right now, this season, she's doing something, and you could lose her here if you try to do it that way. So I've learned that from my children, that it's not right or wrong, it's perspective. And I pretty much predict that she'll go for a period or he'll go for a period and it'll be all right.
It'll be all
right. My one's a positive one, in regards to the overspill of Brendan's fathering. I keep calling him Brendan. Our pops' fathering, right? And I'm going to go back to like this image I had of Brendan, our pops, right? I had this idea of him as that, being this like rebel kind of figure. Yeah, like he used to like tell these stories and he used to listen to rebel music and stuff, right? But there was there's something I adored about it, was the idea that like deep down that he had this fancy, like there was a war going on and he stood for something, yeah. And they, like, I know academics and people watching this will say, no, how the fuck is he never asked us for homework or nothing, but he always kind of like stood true to this idea of like standing up for his beliefs.
Yeah.
And it's something that I've kind of driven home with my kids, and I've definitely pushed them academically. I'd make sure they do their homework.
Yeah, of course.
I make sure they read and stuff, but I make sure that they have like this kind of like, they're starting to form this version of themselves, like, and it's not formed by, making sure you're validated by a teacher.
Yeah.
And making sure you're not validated by nothing pisses me off more than like my children thinking the coach says they do right, that they're right.
They're right.
Yeah.
I'm like, you could still be very fucking wrong because your coach said you're right, like your teacher. And I think Brendan, I don't think he meant to do it, yeah, but he never made me feel as though because the teacher or these people think that this is right, So like an example I'd give off this the other day, right, is my youngest daughter, right? She's going through this stage where she's calling everybody fruity. Yeah. But anyway, she was talking about Jesus. So she's gone, there's a church.
Jesus is fruity.
Yeah, she didn't call Jesus fruity. I don't want to be cancelled just yet, right?
That's clickbait.
Yeah. She went to this church, right? And they were like, we've gone in there, we've opened the door, and they're humming. They're going, and
that's fruity.
Yeah, she's not going to drop the whole fruity thing right now, right?
I'm sorry, bro.
Told you that,
you brought it up, bro.
Yeah, that was just the start of it. That was just to see where
okay.
stage she's at. So we've gone in. The guys tried to give us a flower. I've gone, no worries, we're just looking in here, yeah. And then she like looked at me straight away. She's like, "Why are they humming?" I said, they're praying. I've gone, to Jesus, yeah, or to their God. And she's like, he's not real.
Oh wow, she went there.
He's not real. Like, and I've gone like I didn't, like, there was a part of me growing up, you definitely didn't say nothing about Jesus, yeah?
That's a big thing, isn't it?
Yeah, but it's like, I'm trying to give her like.
What was your advice?
I said, I don't believe he's real either.
Okay.
Because I don't, Because I don't,
yeah.
But I'm saying to you, like, that's one thing that I don't think my dad ever forced an identity. Or made me he never made me feel like I had to like
conform a little.
Conform, that's the word. Conform to like that. They say you're being a good boy, so be a good boy because of that. Yeah, and there's a rebellious spirit that I have here that I want that I feel that I try to carry through to my children. I make sure like, listen, don't just think because they think you're good or wrong that you're good or wrong. So that's what I would say. There was overspill. Yeah. The fruity bit was just a little bit.
Yeah, okay. It had nothing to do with
that identity big thing. Yeah, like you felt like dad let you have that.
I don't know if it was deliberate. This is the thing, because he never sat us down, but at no point did I feel as though
you're pressured into
and he did have a rebellious soul. He had a rebellious soul. Like, as I said, like, so I think it's a combination of how he grew up, how he communicated that, and how he never made us tick a box.
Understand?
I think that's where it's always good to have a perspective of, even though you might look at something negative, how can we find the positive in it? Because, like I said, you know what, we never got that encouragement or guidance, but there was also no push into a box. So looking at things in perspective, I can take this as a real negative, but what did I learn from that and how did it affect me positively changes the dynamics of the way you treat something, innit?
Definitely.
Like, okay, Brendan was an alcoholic, but it's encouraged me not to drink as much. So yes, him being an alcoholic was bad, but it has had a positive effect on my lifestyle. And that's with all information that we're being pushed every day. Don't look at everything as a negative, this is a Debbie Downer. How is it affecting me positively in my decisions moving forward?
Listen to this wild thing. So we know we spoke about, this was a big thing I wanted to talk about, but you kind of touched on it. You see, like communicating emotion and stuff like that, right? I think one of the worst things that ever happened that my dad never said, Damon, I love you. You know, like that kind of thing. And I feel like I wanted to hear that, right? But you know what? My dad never pushed fear onto me.
Okay.
Think about that. He never pushed fear onto me. He never said you can't. So as much as he said, he never said you could, yeah? He never said
you can't, yeah.
He never said you can't. So that's what I felt. I never heard
Powerful,
my dad say.
man.
My dad said, he never said you can't do that.
Yeah, that's powerful.
And I feel like combine that with the rebellious thing. So maybe just a particular instance allowed me to see it in a positive light. Yeah. And maybe it could have gone completely the other way. I'm pretty sure it could have, right? But when you combine them two things, that he never really said, this is the route for you.
Yeah.
And he had the rebellion. I was like, oh, so I can do.
He didn't put you in a box.
Yeah. And this isn't me saying that, he had this planned out. I don't think he did.
Yeah, but the two equated to that. But like I said, it could have went anywhere. Of course. But in you, it chose that direction and it carried on going there. And life kind of just balanced itself out over the long term, innit?
Powerful.
So as we're drawing to a close, right, what parts do we still need to work on? What are you, we kind of touched on it there, but like if you was to make like coming away from this conversation, right, and you're gonna go home and see your family, like what would you say is, all right, this is where we need to tidy up fatherhood, or this is...
I still think the woman's role in the house, I saw that quite a lot, where do the housework at times, that still plays in my head at times. Yeah, and I feel like that needs to be better, I'll be honest. Like that was very apparent in our household. Although it's got so much better, I still feel I can step up a little bit more. Also, like DIY stuff, I'll be honest, that was awful in our household. Like things like, and I want my son to know, no, hold on, like, come on, we can put an IKEA bed together or something like that. So those things are still not good enough in my household, I feel. I know there's still Diddy, but I want him to know we can put some things together, and I got to show him that.
I'm going to change the question. This is random. I'm going to change the question, right? What do you want your children to say about you? You see, if your children, Amelia, Rihanna, Trey, Tyrese, Bella, Luch, Rogue, Crew, what if they're here now? We asked the positive aspect, What would you have liked to say about you in the future?
For me, I would like them to say that I offered them what they needed. I created guidelines and boundaries, but I allowed them to explore who they are and become who they wanted to be.
I like that.
My one would be, we saw Dad when things weren't going well, but we saw him navigate through that, and we saw him really impact our household in a positive life, and he showed up every day. I think that's a big one. But the one that hits me is, I want them to see me in both lights, because I want them to know they can come to me. I think that's really important.
Yeah, that's super powerful. Just to come back to your one, Tom, so you said you want them to understand, that you want them to understand the boundaries that you created. Is that what you said?
Yeah, I created boundaries, but I allowed them to explore themselves. So even though I know what my boundaries are, or my evolving boundaries, because they change with time, but the same way I want them to know that if I say 9 o'clock is your home time, but we can have this conversation. You might want to come home at 9. As you evolve as a person, the boundaries will evolve. Like you said with Chera's kids, they're younger than mine, so their boundaries are different. Yeah. So as they grow and develop as a human, their boundaries develop to allow them to grow into, rather than being, nah, this is my house, this is how it works, and this is what it is. But then you've got these boundaries that aren't acceptable in this household, and you might have to become your own person in your own house. Yeah. But in my house, these are the boundaries here. But yeah, certain boundaries can grow as they grow as people.
Okay, yeah, because just we've been talking about strict and stuff like
Yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah.
So boundaries, you know, like
Yeah, I think boundaries are there. Like I said, boundaries and guidelines, because I think boundaries and guidelines are there. So you can grow outside the guidelines, but this is the guideline that I'm laying down. And like I said, if it's time that you have to grow your roots somewhere else, you might have to leave the house, but you can still
kicking them
grow.
out.
100%.
What about you, D?
Mine. I think, so for me, this is my legacy. This is another word Thomas hates. I think you said Tom hates legacy or something. But when I talk about my legacy, right, in the most narcissistic way, is what my children will tell their children about me. What values and beliefs they took from me and spill. I want my children to sit on this couch one day or sit on a couch one day and say, my dad loved me. You know, he cared. He cared.
Simple.
My dad loved me. My dad was present in good and bad times.
Yeah. I want an oil painting at the top of the stairs of me, standing with a rifle.
The rifle,
yeah. I created this.
I can sort that out.
I created this. This is my heirloom.
Have we got any closing messages? Because I closed the messages for the last. We'll go with you, T. We'll go with you, and then Chiro, you can closing messages for the group, for the people listening to you.
Be open to your fatherhood is an evolving matrix. There's no set structure to it, and it's a learning on the job. But the moment you close the door on something, the moment you potentially close the door to your children, and they will go their separate ways, and you stop becoming a superhero.
I like it.
It's powerful. I think I'm just going to talk about the relationship with how my relationship with my father. Before I felt like I was in like a bit of a victim mode, I'll be honest. And when I realized, hold on, when I become the father, I'm like, oh, he had to go through that. Wow, that's certain things I've really like actually understood him better and actually gone, do you know what? I understand now being a father is different, man.
That's a good one. That is a good
It really is. And I feel like our relationship's got better. Like I love my dad to bits, man. Like, and obviously that's got better when my mum passed, but just when I become a father, I felt like I'd become a man.
Do you know, when I reflect on that, and it's like running your own business, I now understand why the manager was telling me shit.
Amen.
Yeah.
It's easy to talk shit when you're in the way.
I used to tell, like, I remember the guy that owned the company before we took it over, and I was like, I could run this business, like, and I was like, oh, that's what you had to pay. That's what you had to do. And now it's like,
oh, that's why you're asking that person to come in.
That's why you have to be on time, because yesterday I had to talk to somebody about being late every day, and it's like, okay, now I get you. I'm paying you to be on time. And now other workers are seeing me letting you be late. Yeah, that's the boundary. Yeah, you didn't call me. Yeah, but sorry. Yeah, just reflecting on
good
something.
one. I'm just going to throw a bit of a spanner in the works. I'm going to say, dads, fathers, you're wrong too. It's not just your kids. You are wrong too. We spoke about perspective. When you are screaming and shouting as though you rule the world, it's got a lot more to do with your ego and coming across or seeming like you're right, as opposed to actually coming up with a solution for this scenario. Those young people, our children, those beautiful kids, right? They look at you, Tom just said, like a superhero. You screaming and shouting at them changes that image.
No, sorry, I know I'm saying again, a lot of people had conversations like, you stop being your kid's superhero at like 10 or 13 when they start. I think you can be that forever.
Of course you
I've
can.
seen it.
100%.
You could be that superhero forever if you
100%.
do lead right.
I see it, man. I nearly cried the other day. I watched something and this guy was accepting his university fucking, what do you call him?
The degree, isn't it?
Degree, you know, his hat and that, bro. He spoke about his dad, and his dad come out, I was nearly in tears. He was like, my dad did this, we stayed up and studied, you know, like that. Why can't that be the fucking...
You dictate that relationship, and like you just said there, you can't be closed. The moment you start screaming and hollering, and that your child takes that leadership away from you because you're not leading them in the right direction, you're no longer the superhero because they've given it to a teacher, to a peer, to a manager. You can lead them the whole way through, and obviously with Tyrese, with Trey and Riam, we'll see it. The relationships do become, the child moves away from you, they become their own person. And then I think they slowly start to realize what you did and the foundations you laid. and they become
back.
the
Yeah,
child
yeah.
again,
Yeah,
and they
yeah.
see like, okay, yeah, they did their shit for me.
Definitely.
Well, listen, we've come to the end of episode 10 or 11 or 12, right? Listen, this was a little bit more, this was just a little bit more of us being vulnerable, you know,
Yep.
sharing and hoping that you lot can relate. Listen, we'd love to see some comments and some shares about your experiences as fatherhood or being fathered. Thank you for listening. Please like, please subscribe, share.
Give
Yeah,
us
man.
subjects to talk about.
Follow us on DadPod at what's it?
Dad Pod Official UK, I believe.
Check us out. Check us out. We're famous now. All right.